in the end, we are saved by grace and not by anything we think we're doing. And I know we're all hell-bent on running the show and trying to be spiritual seekers, and that's all good stuff. But in the end, we don't succeed with those efforts. We succeed with our sincerity, with our longing, with our invocation, with our tears, ultimately with our surrender. And the place we fail is where grace comes through when we let the gods know we mean business. So all I can say is mean business. You know, you got nothing better to do. Your security is no security at all. Your money is not going to save you. Your beautiful family, your beautiful partner, nothing's going to save you. What's going to save you is deeply embodied prayer and invocation and grace in your surrender. You can't do it. You can't win this game. You're going to lose. And in your losing, in the humble tears of that surrender, you're going to find what you're looking for. And there is nothing more beautiful. But I don't know how to get there. I just know we can't. But it will be given if you mean business.
The nonprofit TAT Foundation was created in 1973 to bring spiritual seekers and finders together. We publish books, videos, and a free online newsletter. We maintain a website of spiritual resources and hold 4 spiritual retreat weekends each year. Our goal is to offer practical guidance for following a spiritual path and living a spiritual life. For more information, go to tatfoundation.org. That's tatfoundation.org.
So to answer your question, I mean, I think it's been the whole journey that I have been following a deeper, somewhat strange in the normal world, mythos that has unfolded. I mean, there are 2 aspects of life, of course, the sort of chop wood, carry water aspect, which is the things we need to do in a very earthy way and carry on, you know, and be responsible there. And then there's the deeper calling, which I have followed against the odds sometimes. And I think any journey worth its salt takes its skill and its talents and its training up to a place where one has to make a kind of quantum leap. And that was the beginning of the journey where I realized that, you know, being in the art scene and believing in art as a kind of false god, that I had to bail on that false god and go for a higher calling. And that, in a sense, was the beginning of a step into the deeper mythos unfolding. And all along the way, it has brought me out of the world so completely, where I didn't speak for a year. I fasted all the time. So much of the year, I figured I fasted for a quarter of a year one year. And finally coming back to the world, which was a different kind of terror, because I got, the moment I said, what a good boy am I can do this emptiness thing. And that's when the gods kicked in, and then I was being brought back to the world. And that was a different kind of challenge, you know. I think opening up to a kind of tantric sexuality, exploring that, you know, with terror, because I had let go of everything, celibacy, and then coming back to the world and speaking, and then public speaking and books and films. And so all of that was very scary. And so the new book, I mean, to bring us up to date, the new book, I'm turned 75 tomorrow. I feel like, what wants to happen now? And so the person I mentioned earlier, who was helping me along the way with the website and things like that, our first website, second website, she says, she says, well, how can I help you now? And I said, well, at this point in life, I have all of this art. You know, I don't sell art. And I would like to somehow get it out into the world. And she suggested a book. So basically, I sat down and decided to put this book together. And rather than me doing all the writing, I called on all of my friends. There are like, something close or over even 50 people who have things written in the book about the art and the journey that I have been on. And I wrote many of the stories as well. Some of the more, the stories that left me in awe, that I feel, I love what Joseph Campbell says about art. He says there are three kinds of art. The lowest kind he calls pornography, which is art to elicit desire. The next level he calls propaganda, which is art with an agenda. I'm going to do something good. I'm going to save the world. I'm going to do a painting about politics or whatever it might be. He calls that propaganda. And he says the highest form of all simply leaves one in awe. And I think that awesomeness is what gets registered in the ethers, you might say. It's what carries that deeper mythos that is always going to be a mystery. We can't control it. We can only listen to its dictates and act in the moment immediately. And that has been a way of life. And at first it was very hard. It was like learning to dance. You're given where to put your foot, but it makes no sense. And then the music comes and you're dancing. And at this point, this strange journey I've been on is so second nature. It has become the dance. And so this book came out of the next step of that dance, you might say. I sat down to write the book. A friend kicked in who, she's published Warner Earhart's first book, and she's been in publishing forever. I mean, she's done the editing and designing. And so she took on the project, and she really is the one. Carol Wright created the book. And so this is where it's at now. It came into the world. And then I was realizing, how are we going to pay for all this? And my benefactor came through and paying, and helped pay. And that was the first book, the hardcover. Second, the Sentient Publications picked up the book, and my benefactor contributed, so it's been subsidized, so it's pretty inexpensive. It's a very substantial book, and it's under $30 because of his input. So the book came out of that current step in that unfolding mythos that had me painting like a crazy person early in my life, with my false god of art, letting it all go, living on emptiness for 10, 15 years, coming back to the world, Parabola magazine making a film about me, a publisher asking me to write my first book, The Inspired Heart, and then this new book comes, and I, and doing public speaking and touring with Parabola. I mean, it all came out of those little steps between the chop wood, carry water moments and the mythos calling. So at this point, at 75 years old, on the downhill side of life, this is what is. I don't know where it's going from here. I feel like I am also, as I jokingly said to a friend the other day, I'm navigating the path of my demise, which means I realize I'm on the downhill slope, and I want to be at one with the literal death as much as I have been with metaphorical. Metaphorical death, I think if you don't walk into those things that scare us to death, we think if we go there, we will die. And it's not foolishness. It's almost like it's the thing that haunts us that we have been avoiding. If we continue to face those fears and go through that metaphorical death, I think that's where life really begins. And that's where it began for me after destroying all my art. And in that, you can live a life where death becomes an ally. And I've talked about this all over the country in a certain sense. And so now it's the reality of even looking into physical. So it's all in the wash. We all have to make this journey and complete it. I want it to be something beautiful, but also my worldly life has been art, coming back to it after all these years, and I have a huge new body of work here. I think so. It's all here, and what is in the book, it was the chop wood, carry water element of my physical life. It's what I've been doing physically. So I want that I'm bringing that in through the book. But more importantly, the most important thing I've ever done was to walk into everything that looked like death. And by that I mean my false God. And we all have them. It could be our family, it could be anything. It could be our children. There's a great saying, goodness is the final obstacle to God. And most of us put so much into doing what we think is good, and it's not enough. I think that inner calling is so much more important. And most of us actually avoid it because it's easier to do the reasonable thing that we have been taught to do. The level of responsibility that has to do purely with the world. When we have other callings, we have other things stirring, if we only have the courage to turn into them. And, and again, at 75 and, it's difficult getting older, that I'm turning into that aspect of it. And what I find is that literal death and metaphorical death are indistinguishable. Loss is loss. And what we fear most, or what we avoid most, is equally terrifying, whether it's in life or it's in death. And I think, again, our freedom lies in having the courage. I mean, what better thing is there to be doing than to free ourselves enough to live a beautiful life and have that mythos go out into the world as a completely unique expression? I mean, it's what we're here for. And instead, we're spending all of our time creating security, doing the good things that we think are so good. And the opposite of good isn't bad. It's mystery. It's unknown. To live in the unknown, to act on it, to have it come through for us in a way we never could have imagined. I mean, life can be a completely magical journey, and that's not pie in the sky nonsense. Everything comes back. I gave up everything, even speech, as I mentioned, and everything has come back. I've moved to Whidbey Island, all of the things that have happened, the books and films and public speaking, and married my beautiful wife at 45 years old. I mean, and interestingly enough, when I gave up my loft, I had this loft in Nyack, New York that I loved. And I walked out the door. It's part of the wild story in my first book where the building was bought. Someone asked, the person who bought it asked me to leave. I said, when do you want me to go? He said, as soon as possible. I had nothing else left at that point. I walked straight out the door and not knowing where I was going. That was the beginning of that. But interestingly enough, my space here, this was a woodworking shop, a big, huge space. It's exactly the size of my loft. And I just thought it so interesting that the word sacrifice means to make sacred. When we could sacrifice out of courage the things that are limiting our unfoldment, it is sanctified and given back to us. What we love is never gone. I loved art. I gave it up for many, many years, and it came back with a vengeance. And the difference is it's not an identity now. It's not a false God. It's what I love to do. And it has a deeper mystery coming through because I'm so detached from it. I don't identify with it. I don't see it as the most important thing I'm doing. I think the most important thing I'm doing was initially letting it all go and jumping into that unknown, and now continuing to live in that unknown. And the work is the celebratory end game that came through and that continues to come through. And as I say now, I'm looking at, okay, well, where do I go from here? There's this book. But, we worked years on this, and Carol Wright, I cannot credit her enough. She was drawing stories out of me for the book. I said, Carol, I don't want to talk about it. I wanted this book to be about art. And she started drawing these stories out. Well, where did this come from? And how did this painting happen? How did this? And so I realized that, the stories, the mythos, and the magic in the way my art is created, it's all about art, and it's all about God, you might say, whatever you want to call that God, and whatever form you want to give it. It's all part of the mystery now, and that is what this book had become. And everything I set out to do radically changed along the way. And then the publisher picking it up, and then we worked for another year on it. And Carol put, endless hours into redesigning pages and drawing stories out of it and cracking the whip for me. So this book it's just some kind of blossoming that I don't know where it's going. But even with that, it would be a great ego identity, but it's not. I'm still looking to the mythos to tell me where to go next. That's where my heart is.
Thank you, Jerry. Oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
Jerry, this is Benji. By the way, I have a copy of your book for those listening. It's very beautiful, like sort of coffee table style book. But some of the contributions from you and some of your friends and people who know you make it's very beautiful. I had a question for you based on something you said. You said a lot of things that I wanted to talk to you about, but I'll speak for myself maybe, but I think there are a number of people on this call who are, living lives somewhat of some of those responsibilities you mentioned, householder, family person, whatever those are. I mean, what can those of us do? Are we not being honest if we're not giving everything up and just walking out the door? How do those of us in those situations, what do you recommend to those of us? How do we, pray sincerely or listen sincerely for, the divine essence? Is it possible for us to face God the way you did, to know God? Or what would you recommend to people in our situation?
Of course it is. No one is asked to do more than they are. No one's asked to step further out of their safe little reality than they are comfortable with. I mean, maybe a little bit of discomfort, but it's not like anybody has to do what I did. My whole journey was about, if you think of creativity, I know when I was painting in the studio, I sort of learned the template of what we're talking about. You face a blank canvas, you get something done, you bring it up to the status quo of a painting you may have done before when I was painting. And then you risk something and you take it further, and you may ruin what you've done, but that's where the inspiration happens. You take that risk, and it's a little step. It's not like you tear the canvas to shreds. It's I learned the mythos, the rhythm of death, destruction, creation, destruction, but there's risk involved. You have to step one little step out and take it further. And that's where the inspiration comes through. And again, being in the studio, I was so driven, and I had such a large body of work, much of which is shown in the book, that it was, sort of sheer terror to have to let all that go. But that too was, just that part of the journey too was a gift of renewal. So what do we do? So how do we do it? I think right where, like Lao Tzu says, the journey of 1,000 miles begins where your feet are. That's your journey is not my journey. My journey came out of my level of courage and cowardice, and I had to face my own mini cowardice at that moment. And that's all any of us have to do. And there's a lot to be said for invocation, which is the kind of embodied prayer. Ask for what you want. How many of us are even asking? We're so busy hustling to survive and to get the next dime or to get the next, advantage in the world, or to make ourselves feel a little safer. You know, how many of us are asking for the ultimate gift of our very being on the planet? Just ask for it and then do what it takes to get it, because it will come. And it's not like I know how I need to do it, and I certainly can't tell others how they need to do it. But I know there's something about a passionate heart, a determined heart, mind, body, and soul that is willing. We get what we ask for. There's a great story that Ramakrishna tells where one of his followers came to him and he kept saying, "How do I find God? How do I find God?" And so Ramakrishna finally puts the guy's head underwater and he comes up gasping for air. He says, "When you want God as much as you wanted air, you will find God." You know, life will put us to a place where all of our safety starts to feel unsafe. All of our security starts to feel foolish and selfish and small. And when we want air and we want more than that small life, you know, the end game of possessions is death. And it's not the beautiful death, it's the meaninglessness that we end up with. When we want meaning and we want our journey to light up the world, it will do it. It's our birthright. It's nobody special. No one can do it for us, and anybody could do it for themselves if you ask for it and you want it badly enough. And I don't know what else to say about that, because no one's going to do it for you. There are no great teachers who are going to do it. You can look at their lives and be inspired and see, wow, what courage. You know, you look at the great lives like Carl Jung, or you know, your TAT Foundation, Rose. You look at these great people. It's like, you know, they did something really courageous, and because they wanted something more. We don't have to destroy what we have to create ultimate beauty in our lives. We just have to ask for it and then have the courage to take that one step that we are given. And it will be an internal knowing. The world will not support it. Not only that, the world will probably see it as a little bit crazy, maybe. Like, why are you doing this? Or, you know, you were the one who were taking care of everybody. All of a sudden, you're not doing that anymore. What's wrong with you? I mean, those are some of the reactions you might get from the world. But if your heart is clear and you know what you want, you're going to create it, and the gods will help you every inch of the way. And then life begins, whatever age you are.
Thank you, Jerry. Just maybe one more question, and then we'll get into Q&A with the whole group. So this is Brett. I wanted to ask you about what it felt like to take that risk and to take that step. You've talked about the fear and maybe the terror of making that leap of faith. But I imagine there was something about it that felt right, or you wouldn't have done it. So tell me what that's like. Yeah.
Well, it's like alchemy. You know, you have these dueling opposites. And then what comes through is this third unseen possibility. So I often describe, even now, you know, moments where I have to make that leap again in a different kind of way. It's like looking at it two eyes. Like, one is the, oh no, not that eye. And the other is yes. You know, and it often happens in dark places when after all my driven life, it started to feel so empty. And yet I didn't know where to go from there. And there were many whispers along the way, most of which, you know, there are many stories, and I, of course, can't tell them. But my first book, I go more into that stuff, those detailing what led up to it in a certain way. And so it felt like equal amounts at first of terror and total elation. And it was almost like it became so clear. It was like a pendulum swinging back and forth. And then it just started to slow down enough where I knew I went for life. I went for joy. I went for what felt like, this makes no sense. I am destroying everything I thought I was. I am turning my back on all of it. And all I know is I feel more alive than ever. I'll tell you, I was just talking to someone the other day, and they asked me about hesitation or regrets in life. And I said, I only have one. And it was that I hesitated when I got the word to let it all go. It was like, oh no, not that, because I think very often the thing we have to look at is the thing we're most attached to. And I grew up in a poor, mostly Black neighborhood where our family was the minority. And the one thing I could do was art. And so the whole world, again, what a good boy are you? You can do this thing. So it became such an identity because I didn't know who I was separate from that letting it go, like who are you if you don't have this identity? But who we are is so much more because it includes everything. And not only that, the thing we're afraid of letting go of, again, sacrifice means to make sacred. It's different for each of us. We let it go because we know it no longer serves us. It feels dead, and yet we're too afraid of the possibility of letting it go. And it's also like being afraid of life. So we shrink back and we get smaller. We don't become larger. We don't become that thing that we see right next at two eyes again. One eye, we often give in to the other eye, to the eye that it says no. The eye that says yes knows it's full of life. And so we might enter into an abstract sense of elation, which ultimately Destroying My Art was. And then, of course, you have this whole journey in front of you that is so unknown, so has its own levels of terror. So it felt both, but I wished I hadn't hesitated because that rhythm, because in the cyclical nature of life, I think that hesitation is almost written into our humanity. It's like if you look at Christ in the garden, you look at Buddha before enlightenment, you look at anything we do, it's not just these great beings, but it's like our hesitation when we know something's right. You've been in conversations where you should have said something, you didn't say it. It would have been so powerful to say it and such a gift to everyone around, and you didn't do it. It's a moment like that hesitation, we all know it. I think it's written into our humanity. Great weavers weave a flaw in the weaving. Great carpet makers do it. Native American baskets have a little flaw. I mean, it's a deliberate knowing, I think it's what the so-called original sin, whatever that means, I think that's probably it. The thing is, you're going to blow it as a human being. You're going to hesitate, but do it anyway. But that imperfection stays with us. I wished I didn't hesitate because I see how it continues. I continue to hesitate, and it's only for a second, but it's too much. It's too much of a hesitation. And then I do it anyway. So that's my regret. It was scary. I hesitated, and I did it. And it was the most elating thing. Okay, let me also say, so after Destroying My Art, there was a film being made about my life that included the art, and they were still working on it. And I let it all go. I let everything go. And again, it's a really miraculous story how I ended up. The film was completed without me after that. And I ended up, through miraculous circumstances, at the film event. And it was the most powerful night of my life. I love what Einstein said about matter never dies, it just changes form. That night, what came through, I mean, it was a very savvy New York art crowd. There were probably a couple hundred people in the audience, and they called me down, and I hardly spoke at that time, and all of a sudden, I ended up there because somebody brought me there. And so I ended up on stage speaking, and all I know is all that I put into all that art over the years came through me that night. And I think it came through for everybody. And there was just a moment where I even saw just this light shooting out. And I've been stepping off and on to that streak of light ever since. And that is the deeper mythos that I spoke of. What happened there, energy didn't die, it changed form, and it became a way of being instead of doing. And that's a huge difference, because in the emptiness, something can be creative and something can come through powerfully that you didn't even expect yourself. Whereas the strategy of creation and being a creative person has its limits. What came through that night was the gift to be what I needed to be in each moment. And it didn't have to be art. It could be one-on-one with another person. It could be anything at all. It could be listening. It could be an action. It could be a word. It could be silence. I'll tell you a story. I had a woman come here. She wanted to interview me. And so she was coming from Seattle. We live on Whidbey Island. And so I hear this knock at the door. She was coming. And I had been doing a lot of interviews at that time. It was when the internet was just opening up and a lot happening. And everybody wanted me because they had nobody else. And so I hear a knock on the door, and I was all geared up for this interview. She was a kind of an important one. And I opened the door, and all I could feel was darkness and pain. And I couldn't shake it. And I thought, something's wrong with me, or what's going on? What is this about? I didn't know what it was about. And so here I'm supposed to be doing an interview, and the woman was really lively and enthusiastic, and she comes in, and I just step back, nod, I have her sit down, I made tea for her, and she's talking 100 miles an hour. And all I could do was be silent. And so I finally sat down, and I got quieter. It was so chaotic within whatever was going on. I didn't know. I went within, and all of a sudden, in your own meditations, there's a place where, if you're lucky, you kind of can sink into a place where the room kind of lights up, or you light up within. You just feel it. You know it. Got there. You don't even know how, but you're there for a second. That happened, and I felt that darkness go. I looked up, and she was crying, and she said, "Nobody ever did that to me before." She said, I was just diagnosed with cancer, and she was so desperate and so unhappy, and there was something about my silence, our silence, that opened up, and she was in tears, which is where she needed to be. She ended up staying the night. We made dinner for her. She spent the night, and we had a great interview the next day. But that's a good example of, you see, that moment was about nothing. It was about doing nothing. And even though the whole trajectory, all the momentum was about doing something, speaking, doing, being present with another human being, whatever, the moment called for nothing. That's what I mean by the mystery of the creation that comes out of being. Whereas if I had an idea of doing, or what I was supposed to do, or who I thought I was supposed to be in that moment, it would have failed miserably. It was a gift. And it was a gift to me that I could hold that darkness for as long as I did, because it was enormously difficult. I mean, I didn't know what she thought. If she thought I was crazy, she'd come to this crazy man's house who wouldn't talk to her. And it ended up a beautiful experience in the end, but completely unexpected. That's the way it works.
Thank you, Jerry. Let's hear what some of the other questions are. So who has a question for Jerry? Chris, I see your hand is up, and anyone else who has a hand, you can click on the react button down below and click the raise hand button. And
I was looking for that. I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it's harder on the phone. Go ahead, Chris.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
So if I had more time, we'd probably have a lot more to talk about. There's a lot of things in your story that happened to me where probably the first from the time I was 15 till about my late 20s, my identity was pretty wrapped up in being musical. And I felt that sort of emptiness about it eventually. I remember starting it when it happened to me, the ability that I realized that I had a musical streak. And, that long story short is I ended up selling everything and getting rid of all my stuff. And it wasn't like a spiritual thing for me. It was just, it happened at a time that I was seeking spiritually, but it wasn't something that I let go of to that end or anything. It was just something I realized had sort of, I was reading a book about Robert Johnson was this guy. You might know who he is. He's a Jungian guy. Yeah. And he had written about being a musician himself, and that he realized, he looked up the word amateur and that it meant lover, and he thought that he was okay with just being a lover of music rather than somebody that was professional, and let it go. And he enjoys it now. But I want to ask you something specific, because I could ramble on. And one thing that I've noticed about myself is, hold on, I knew this was going to happen. There's so many people here right now. When I'm constantly asking people like you, I'm getting emails and stuff, and the constant thread is, am I doing this right? And the constant thought is like, I'm not doing this right, or I'm doing something wrong, or I'm not doing this good enough. I don't have enough commitment, or I'm looking in the wrong places, yada, yada, yada. And over the last few years, I've kind of collected this bag of, say, practices or methods or things worth doing that I think make practical sense and I resonate with. And I was writing an email the other day, and it was like, I kind of wrote back as an afterthought to this huge thing. And I was like, maybe it's all right for me to just, the most practical thing is to just do something every day, to commit to doing something every day. I have this whole bag of things that I find that might be useful, that I think that are beneficial or that I resonate with, rather than me thinking constantly that some committing to one thing and then using it like I think there's going to be some beeline to enlightenment with consistency, that it's okay for me to sort of live and use those tools daily. And one of those that I've always liked a lot, that I always come back to, is dream work. And you were talking about Jung and Campbell, and I listen to a lot of Campbell lately, and I used to listen to read a lot of Jung. But when you were talking about always running towards what you're afraid, or taking that risk of doing things that you're afraid of, one of the things that I always notice about, even if I go through periods where I don't remember my dreams and stuff, is like, there's always a dream that comes up where everyone is running from a ghost and it's scary. And I'm always the one that turns around, and I like run into the darkness to face this ghost or this spirit or something. And it happens all the time. And there's just a part of me that knows that these sort of messages, although they're hard to decipher, and a lot of the time I think that my attempts to do so might cause more confusion than they do clarity, there's this sort of, and I've done this throughout my life, where I've done what you've done, where I've thrown it all to the side and I've dropped everything and started over. I'm in the middle of it right now, and this time it's with my family. And there's a lot of people that were in my circle that knew me when I was younger that think that I'm being reckless now, but I know better. Because I'm in a new place. I've been here a week in South Carolina, and we're living on a farm with a bunch of other people. I gave up the house, but there seems to be this thing inside where I'm trying desperately to face what I'm afraid of, it seems like. And I just suppose I wanted to report that, and I kind of gathered that maybe you had some experience with dream work. If anything comes up.
Dreams are certainly one tool. I mean, I think it's good that you're the one who turns and faces the boogeyman. Again, I love what in the Carlos Castaneda books I read years ago, more than once. Don Juan, the teacher, says, a warrior knows what he's waiting for, and he knows how to give himself to it. And I think to know what you're waiting for, you have to ask for what you want. Because there's something about, I mean, life can be pretty arbitrary. There are a million practices, and, you know, they're all good, you know, sort of the, you know, they're good things, there are good practices. There's no question about that. But there's something about the passion of knowing what we want and asking for it. So, you know, I think you have a really good foundation from what you said. I mean, you know, it sounds like you have had the courage to let go of a lot. And that's not enough in itself, because it may mean taking something on. You may have children that you're estranged from, and you have to turn into that. Or, you know, I mean, I don't know what it is for you, but I know that if you want clarity, you want beauty, you want your life to blossom in its own unique way, I think you have to ask for that, and then you have to have and then it's unconditional. What you have to do from there, you have to do, and no one can tell you otherwise. But again, it has to come out of the asking, because there's a difference between running the show and deciding all the things you want to do and all the disciplines you're choosing to dabble with. It's another thing to ask for what you want and to have the whole universe behind it, and then to act on that. That's where real power comes through, real change, real effectiveness in the world. So again, ask for what you want and it sounds like you have this stirring courage. You sound like an idling Porsche. You know, you've let go of a lot. Good thing, but it's not enough. You know, idle it in the direction of your quest, what you're asking for, and let your courage rip from there.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Chris. Sunny, you're next.
Hi, Jerry.
Hey.
Hi, nice meeting you. During the talk, you mentioned the meeting emptiness, and I'd like to hear more about meeting emptiness. For example, how did the meeting emptiness happen, and what is it like? And I think you gave a good example of the emptiness when you had an interview with a woman. I can kind of got that part, but how did the meeting emptiness happen to you, and what was it like?
Well, of course, it began letting go of my identity, you know, because, you know, our sort of, you know, our persona, that which we create in the world as self, it will just scream, you know, it's out there in such a, we just keep it alive and we feed it, and then we convince somebody of it and we feel good about that, but it may all be lying to ourselves. So, you know, maybe emptiness is trusting our aloneness. You know, individuality, we all like to be individuals. We get tattoos, we do things, get hairdos, whatever the things we do to feel separate. But true individuality is sheer terror for most of us. So I think emptiness is the ability to fully inhabit our individuality, which means an aloneness that doesn't need a reference point in the world. Its reference point is the mystery itself, and you trust that, and that becomes the conversation. It becomes your partner in crime. You know, you're creating in a way that the world may not even see, and it may look like you're emptying out even further. And I think it will always look like that, because what you're emptying out is ego. You know, even if that ego is enormously successful, it's a failure in the eyes of your true being, because your true being is greater than that, than what the world is telling you are. There's something that wants to come through that's even more alive. So maybe emptiness is the ability to fully inhabit your aloneness. And that's not lonely, because your relationship opens to the mystery, and it's a love affair. And once you have fallen in love, and once that, it's like, and then you marry it, and then it becomes a way of life. It's like the dance I talked about. After a while, the world can scream, it'll love you, it'll hate you, it'll understand you, it won't understand you. It will not matter. You will do what you need to do, and you will light up the room in the way you need to light it up when you need to do it. That's what we're here to do, not maintain our persona. So emptiness is truly who you are. You are all alone, and there's nothing wrong with that, and that's a good thing. Even if you're married, even if you have children, your aloneness has to be your deepest marriage.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Patrick, you're next.
Hi, I find it's kind of interesting, kind of between like a seeker. That's for me. My path is like seeking. How do I get to where Rose got to? And your path, where it seems more you were pulled out through kind of like a creativity and something like that. It was kind of like. And it was interesting when you talked about security and stuff like that. And I kind of wonder, am I being secure? Is that my greatest fear? I just see it paradoxical because, because like as a seeker, you could use your own life, and your own life experiences, and it's pretty mundane. It's not a big, it's not as big as giving up everything and that type of thing. It can be pretty mundane.
Yeah.
But yet there's something that kind of this kind of fear. There is something in that, in the fear and the terror, and then the elation, that this kind of these kind of opposites. Yeah, and like something Bart Marshall said, he said that you're something that really annoys me. But he said that you're exactly where you want to be. And so like it's like there is something being held onto, but I guess there's no way of knowing how to let that go, or I don't know. I don't know how that comes across as a question.
Yeah,
But,
I hear the question. I hear your question. Again, I hate to keep harping on the asking part. So, where you're at, and it is what you want, in a secure, reasonable way. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have to do some of that to figure out it's not all there is. So what about this spiritual quest? Like, what would you like that end game to look like? Who do you want to be? I'm not saying you're going to know how to get there, and I don't think anyone else is going to know, but I think you can ask for that. And again, like a warrior, stalk it, know what you're waiting for, and know when the moment comes, because it will come in an unexpected way. You will know what you have to do. And then it's up to you to do it, to find the courage, to step outside of that beautiful creation that you've already made. I think, we have to do something with our time and energy in creating whatever is comfortable and beautiful. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But there's something more powerful about the invocation. Okay, you got that. You've been there, done that. Now, maybe ask for that, what that end game for the spiritual quest might look like, and ask for it, and be like a warrior, knowing what you're waiting for. You're waiting for an answer for the next thing to do. And it will come, whether you have the courage to go for it or not. That's up to you.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
Any other questions from anybody else?
I have, if nobody else have a question, I have a question.
Sure, Bonnie, is that you?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hi, Jerry. I enjoyed your description. I wonder if you could say a little more about you mentioned sometimes when you felt this sort of almost like a revelation from the universe or from, the God of art, or whatever label we put on, it's a very strong revelation. But you mentioned sometimes it can even be a bodily reaction. I wonder if you could say more about that. And I guess in terms of your body sensation, like how do you, because we experience that all the time in our life, how do you, how would you, do you have a specific understanding of like when you have certain sensation, you know what that means? I'm just curious about that. Am I making sense? I hope it's not.
Yeah. Well, in terms of what I meant was, in a sense, your body may be included in that it's time to take physical action. Like you might say, me destroying my art, which was like just the last little tiny bit of the process. That was the least of it, but it required physical. I knew what I had to do. I had to use my body and let go of my, have my body participate in the killing of a false god, my false identity. So that's how I meant it. But I will also say, generally speaking, women are more embodied generally than men in a deeper way. Women, I think, are of the earth, they bring us into being. And I think your body is a pretty good indicator for what you need to do. You can trust your body. You can trust in a way that men can't always do. I think, so just in terms of being a woman, you have an advantage. I love what, I think it was Mayor Baba said, all women are 3 days ahead of their men spiritually. And it's because of that body wisdom, trusting your body. I mean, when a creepy person is around you, trust your body. I mean, I hear there were a couple of times when you spoke and you spoke last and you even apologized for speaking now. Where's the ferocity in that feminine warrior who speaks because she wants to, because she needs to? You don't have to wait for your turn. There's no turn. If you're moved to do or to speak, trust your body, because your body is fierce and alive, and it wants to be on this planet and exist. So I would say trust your body and allow it to exist. Allow it to be fierce. Allow yourself to be a warrior instead of timid and small. There are times, I felt timid and small and meaningless. I didn't know what was going on. In the story I told about the woman that came to introduce me, I didn't know what to do. The only thing that worked was stillness. So that's what I did. But you can trust your body, but let your body become a fierce warrior as well, and trust it enough that you have a place in this world that is there only for you. And when a moment is yours, take it. And if you don't take it, the only person hurting you is yourself. I don't know if I answered your question, but there was a couple answers in that.
Yeah, that was actually made huge amount of sense to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bonnie. I just want to call out that we've reached the official end time for the event. So thanks to everyone who attended. I don't know, Jerry, how much time you have or energy to continue on, or if there are any other questions, but I do want to honor the end time there. Jerry, I don't know how much time you had to take additional questions, if there were any.
Yeah, I'm here if you want. If there are more, I'm happy to.
Sure. With that being said, did anyone have a question for Jerry?
I do. Hi, my name is Vanessa. Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
I'm moved by how you knew to sit still with the woman who came in who had cancer. And I'm curious, do you think that does daily meditation play the biggest role to your intuition?
Well, at this point, when I spoke of the dance and how it's become second nature, I don't meditate, but I know when to meditate, which is different. I think meditation is always good. It's always a good thing to practice, to give, because to meditate is to take time away from the demands of a physical world and family and children and all the other things going on. So as a discipline, it's good to befriend the space of meditation and learn that, wow, there's a gift in there. But I think ultimately meditation has to be like everything else, the moment's call. I know, I built a tower. The picture is in the book of the tower I built. It's our meditation tower. And there are times when I just know to go there. And it seems to always work when I go. If you're just present and your life becomes a prayer, where you're always invoking the miracle, you're always calling on the gods. I mean, I'm a pain in the neck to the gods, you might say, because I'm always looking and watching. I had that thought the other day. I must be such a pain in the neck to the gods. It's my conversation. But the thing is, knowing when, tracking the moment and being present in the moment, fiercely present, and doing what you do, but what's that biblical saying? Something about I say unto you, watch. You're always watching for what wants to happen next. And there are no rules around that. And again, you could be fierce, you could be gentle, you could be noisy, you could be quiet. It doesn't matter. But to know what to do next and to do it is paying attention in a way that we often don't. We get so lost in what we're doing or what we think we should be doing or what somebody else thinks we should be doing. But if we're always watching, I think the gift of meditation, and the best of it always comes with grace. Nobody owns that space, like they can go there anytime they want to. I don't believe that. I think we get better at it. But the ultimate gift of meditation is to be present with it when it calls. So practice meditation. Good thing, because it will get you away from your normal life. You take a sacred time, create an altar for yourself. Let it be in a secret place where nobody can mess with it or look at it or touch it, or, let it be your private secret conversation with the gods, with the goddesses, whatever you want to call them. Let that be your holy ground, and let it be only yours. And meditation will open your heart to that possibility. But ultimately, let it become who you are. When it calls, respond like anything else. When it's called to dance, dance. When it calls to speak, speak. When it calls to be a warrior, be a warrior. When it calls to be as gentle as a little girl, be that. That's what it means to be present.
Thank you.
Hi, Jerry. Eric here. Thank you for a very inspiring hour or so, however long it's been. I was just languaging some of your recent ideas in my own way, and vitality. Like you were on this riff about the body, and the body knows when you were dialoguing with Bonnie. And I don't know if I'll try to make it a question. If you you sense the aliveness, I think, is with what the universe wants to birth next. And so my physical body is alive to that. There's a vitality there. And, conversely, when it's not, when it's feels lifeless or dead, then, then I go to a talk like this and oh yeah, that's right. I remember what that feels like. So if you want to respond to that, that's an ill-formed question, but vitality would be my language of it.
Yeah. Well, I find I live for inspiration, and sometimes there are, again, I'll reference that story with the interview again. That did not feel anything like vitality to do what I had to do. So sometimes doing the right thing is what gives you your vitality, or what I call inspiration. I love what it says in Course in Miracles. It says, think about this. How often do we even think this way? But it says, every encounter with another human being, you know, you run into a bagman, you're the lady at the supermarket, the man in the hardware store, whatever. Every encounter with another human being offers the possibility of a miracle. What if we went about our daily encounters stalking that possibility? And so sometimes we go in not feeling very vital. In fact, I will even go so far as to say, I often find the miracle when I feel least vital. It's almost like the encounter is what gives me the vitality. Doing the right thing in the moment is what gives it to me. And it's almost always unexpected. It's not strategy. You can't strategically go, you know, like people who strategically try to be great teachers, I think will fail miserably. I think a great teacher is always in the process of learning and awakening themselves. I feed and live on inspiration, and I have no idea how to get it. All I know is that I am present to it, and I am calling on it all the time. And every encounter, I mean, I'll talk about the weather. I have a friend who fixes his motorcycles, and I love to talk to him. And I'll talk about motorcycles, but I'll tell you, you give me one out that takes it to another level, and I jump in and grab that moment. And I think that's how vitality comes through. It comes through by living for the next possible inspiring moment. And you can't own it. You know, I love, again, what Course in Miracles says, to heal another is to heal yourself. And what they mean by healing is we all become forgetful. We all become boring firewood. You know, it's part of that cyclical nature of things. But I think to seize the moment and to do what it takes to inspire the moment, everything comes more alive, including you. And therein lies vitality. But it will not always feel like that. You know, Joseph Campbell says, as you know from the Joseph Campbell person, you know, follow your bliss. You know, sometimes it's not always blissful. I love what Michael Meade says, sometimes it's blisters. So I think I want vitality too. And I don't know how to get it. I just know it is so completely available, and it calls every encounter, certainly with every encounter. And it's almost like you become a gold miner, and you know how to get to the gold. You get better at it, you know, the more you practice it. But how many of us even, what if we went into the world thinking every encounter offers the possibility of a miracle? What if we were to live our lives like that? And it's not to be foolish, because sometimes, you know, somebody just wants to talk about growing potatoes. So you know, sometimes all you do is smile and love them, and that's the inspiration. You'll walk away feeling better. But you're always looking for a chance to jump in with both feet and give them heaven, if you can do it, because you're giving yourself heaven. It's a great gift to the world, and it's a very selfish enterprise.
Patrick, looks like you had your hand raised.
Yeah, cool. Something that I'm very interested in is Hugh Berbenoit's conciliatory principle, where there's like two opposites which kind of meet, two opposites which kind of satori when you're able to kind of hold both of the aspects. And what I hear a lot of teachers talk about is light, you know, to light up a room, to the light and all this stuff, but they never talk about the darkness. So I'm just wondering, you know, is there like a conciliatory meeting point for the light and the darkness?
Most definitely, yeah. You talk to my wife, she does tours to the Black Madonna sites because it's that important, you know, the dark. I mean, in a way, you know, I have not been I've spoken of light for sure, but the only way to the light is through the dark. I mean, it's alchemy. Like alchemy is the union of opposites where a third entity comes through. You might have light and dark or two opposites, and the unexpected is that which comes by holding that discomfort. And again, walking into your fear is about walking into darkness. I mean, the whole idea of the Black Madonna is that to find, you know, when life falls apart, when life is so enormously difficult, you know, there's a dark goddess that holds that holy ground and is there to you know, to launch you out of it and to, you know, but that's the ground held. And I think when you can fully inhabit your own darkness, you can do it for other people. And even if they can't, again, like that woman who came here, she was so dark and she could not hold it at all. Whatever happened there, I know that because I held it in that extreme discomfort, that's where the alchemy shifted and it became a whole expression of something completely different. I mean, alchemy is a good study with union of opposites, you know, which is the conjunctio, the place they come together. But there's no avoiding the darkness. You know, I maybe tell you a little quick story. My younger brother died. And my younger brother, he was really handsome and he was kind of a bit of a womanizer, and life was easy for him because, you know, he was good looking and he always had all the cute girls that we were all jealous of. And he was charming. Everybody loved him. He was funny. And I always loved my brother. I never had a hard time with him, except that he was my little brother and a pain in the neck sometimes. But it wasn't a difficult relationship. It was just a kind of non-existent relationship because he was so one-dimensional in a certain sense, because he got off easy. And it was like, you know, the whole world loves me. Why should I do any work about it? So when he was dying, I think he trusted I might know something. And I didn't know if I did or not. And he would call and he would come. And at one point, when he was really on the edge of death, he called me. My older brother called me and put him on the phone. And I just got a hit that he couldn't die and he couldn't go back to life, but he was on the edge and he was really in a difficult place. And so, you know, the thing you don't talk to dying people about, most people, is dying. Or, you know, you try to be up, and his wife was saying he's a trooper and, you know, he's fighting it, and, you know, all the good things you say or do, or you don't say anything because you're terrified yourself. Some part of me, because I didn't know quite what to do or say, but because I knew how to walk into my own metaphorical death, I knew something came through that I knew to do, but I was also nervous about it. There's a story in my book about this where I talk about an art piece that was happening very connected to him and this event. But finally, I almost had to face my own fear because I didn't want to lay any more on him. He was suffering, but I got a hit that he was stuck. And I just turned to him and I said, Jack, you are dying. That's all you have to do right now. And he just burst out crying. And my brother got on the phone, my older brother, and he said, what did you say to him? But there was something that happened there that just brought us together in a way that I always wanted from him. It was the depths of love and communication, because in some way I had to jump into my own fear of death, my own, metaphorically, but this was a real somebody dying who I cared about. There was something about that moment that gave me everything and gave him everything we needed. He died the next day. But, you know, I think, well, enough said. That's the story.
Yeah, thanks for that.
can't even remember what the question was at this point. Got off on a tangent.
Hi, Jerry.
Oh, darkness.
Oops.
Yes. Yes.
I see you. You and your wife run sort of like a little retreat. Could you say so for people to? It's like to provide them with a get away from the like to try to have a place to be tranquil and meditate. I'm wondering what's the main modality to help them get in touch with their self, and if that, I'm just assuming that's the idea of the whole.
Yeah. Well, my wife does it more. She has a Abaton, which is a dream temple she created down among my art pieces, where she does dream work. She also, as I said, does tours of Europe. But, there's many things that she does for the people who want to come for that. She mostly does it. And if people want me involved, I will be involved, but it's more her thing. But sometimes people come and we do things together. So, she does things like we have this outside tub, and she does herbal and crystal baths for people if they want to do that. There's a lot of counseling, meditation, chanting, creative projects she will do, made masks if you want to make a mask or make, recently she's been reading Clark Strand and Perdita Finn's books, and we actually went to New York and met them on the darkness, to speak of darkness too. And it's a beautiful story and book, and she's been, sort of working on that front and making these sort of you can't even say non-denominational, non-religious rosaries. She's made many of them, and sometimes people want to do that and create their own prayers and their own rituals around them. She will work with people where they are at and what they want to do. And if they just want to come and be quiet, we have a meditation tower. Let me give you all my email if you want any information. I could also send you videos of our place. We have a beautiful private space Marilyn calls the Magdalene Suite, which people stay in. And the gallery is off of it. The tower is here, the meditation tower. And we welcome guests. And Marilyn will work with you. And if you want, I will too. But so my email is Soluna, SOLUNA, @whidbey.com. And my website is handsofalchemy.com. So you can go there and look and see some of what we're doing.
Thank you.
I just shared those in the chat, Jerry.
Can you? I didn't. It came on my screen and then left. What's it? Luna.
So Luna, like sun and moon. SOL.
UNA.
Whidbey.com. WHIDBEY.com.
Okay. Thank you.
And my wife says, if you want to contact her directly, LAPIS, like the stone, lapis @whidbey.com.
It's also on your website, I believe, Jerry, the way to get in touch with you, handsofalchemy.com.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Or if you just Google Jerry Wennstrom, I think that's the first result.
Yeah.
Jerry, if you have time, I have a question for you. We spoke about death of a little bit, physical death. I think in deep down, there's always fear of physical death because it's a disappearing of you as identity. So what would you say about physical death versus metaphorical death?
Well, I think what we are left what we feel in a confrontation with either, it is the same. They're indistinguishable. We don't sit there and say, well, at least I'm not physically dying when we're going through a metaphorical death. It could not feel worse. So, but the point of it is, if we can befriend the cyclical nature of that process, the way it comes around cyclically, birth and death, the levels of birth and death, if we can befriend it in our life by facing our fears and liberating ourselves from those limitations, I think it will set the groundwork for the ability to do it physically. I mean, it's what I sort of said earlier about at my age, I'm turning towards navigating and becoming a willing participant in the process. I don't want to die any more than anyone else wants to die, and I don't want to be morose and not seek life and inspiration. I'm still doing all of that, but I'm also in the reality of a person my age where, I'm feeling limitations in my body. I'm not as healthy and not as I was. I can't do as much as I was. So I'm trying to just be present with the physicality of letting go. I want to participate. I don't want to go kicking and screaming, and I don't want to avoid it. I don't want to deny that those moments steps towards that seeming oblivion. But it's so much like everything I've been doing anyway, but it's different. I understand, it's like the big boogeyman. But if you can face it metaphorically and receive the gift that comes through, you'll be able to do it physically. So I know we give more credence to literal death as a powerful terror, but it really isn't. I mean, if death were the most powerful force, why do people commit suicide? There must be something worse that they give themselves to death, And it's metaphorical death. It's death of the ego, death of the identity. So who's to say that it's the big boogeyman even? It's like we live with all kinds of boogeymen, and they're uniquely our own. For me, it was my false god of art, It was the one thing I couldn't give up. And I used to say as much. I'll always paint no matter what. I'm not even painting anymore. I'm doing sculptures. The point is, death is death, metaphorically or not. It feels the same. It's indistinguishable. Befriend it, because it's part of who we are. And we can't deny a part of the inevitable who we are. And not only that, it's our source of life. To give yourself to metaphorically and free yourself of death is to be free of it and free to live your life, free to live fearlessly. I mean, the Tibetans have a practice where they practice on grave sites. I mean, it's kind of bizarre, but so is everything, where they feed their body parts to the demons. You want my arm, take it. You want my heart, take it. I think it's trying to befriend death so that, because it's never going away. It's that ghost chasing that was mentioned earlier. That ghost is always chasing us until we turn and we befriend it. And again, at my age, 75 years old tomorrow, I'm saying, okay, how can I hold your hand and not avoid it? And it's not comfortable, but that is what I want to be able to do. Both. And I'm also shooting for inspiration any moment I can grab it. They're both alive and well.
Thank you.
Happy birthday, Jerry.
Thank you.
Jerry, last question. I listened to this YouTube channel called Sensus Fidelium, where Franciscan priests, they talk about, looking forward to death because then they can be with God. I don't know where they're getting their feeling that they're going to be with God at that point. But what do you feel will happen after death? What of you will still exist, if anything, or yeah?
Yeah. I don't know. that answer, but I'll tell you what I do know. I know that everything I walked into that looked like death, and that the world says, if you do this, you will not survive, including giving everything I owned away and trusting the world to carry my life, which was the craziest big thing I could have done. All I know is everything that set out to kill me gave me life. So I don't know what happens after death physically, but I can't believe it's not going to have a surprise, a prize. I can't believe there's not something there we're going to be launched into that is something more lifelike than this clumsy physical world we're bumping around in. I can't believe it doesn't exist, but I have no idea what it is or what it looks like or what it will be. But it's what I want to give myself to in the same unknown way that I've given myself to all the things that terrify me. I mean, stories in my first book are about, we could write books about anything. I wrote about all the moments where I had to face my worst fear, including walking into a gang in the middle of the streets in the city and having it all turn out well, where it's like threatened with your life, and you give yourself to it in a way that requires courage, and there's a moment that just saves the day. Everything that I walked into, and I didn't do it because I wanted to, I gave it myself to it because it was right in front of me. I don't believe in climbing mountains and doing stupid, maybe it's not stupid. I don't believe in creating false dangers. I think life is dangerous enough if we have the courage to live it and to walk into it. And especially when you don't interfere and it's there because you didn't ask for it. If it's there, it's God talking. That's my mantra. And all I know is everything that looked like that kind of impossible situation had a gift, including letting everything go and trusting that my life will be carried. I could never have carried it more beautiful than it was carried without me doing it.
Thanks, Jerry.
Any more questions?
Stump the audience, Jerry.
I have a question, Vanessa.
Okay.
What do you think about human suffering, like the physical part of suffering? What's your take on that?
I think it's really hard. It's part of our embodiment here on the planet. There's just no way around it. Again, I think learning to turn into difficult places within emotionally, it's no different from physically. I know that when, even with pain, when I'm in pain, there's a way to sort of trust it and turn into it. And it's the best we can do with it. Not that we can make it go away. And so, I think we have to do our best with the doctors or whoever might want to help us, but be wise like the devil too, that everybody's trying to sell you a pill or something. But, there's something about learning to face our emotional pain that eliminates physical pain as well. And also, if it is just physical pain, which I'm not sure there is such a thing as just physical pain, there's something about turning into it rather than avoiding it that seems to make it easier. But it's hard. It's hard being embodied. It's hard on the planet. But I was at this dinner party the other day, and I somehow the word bodhisattva came up. Those who come back to the planet to bring everyone to the Buddha, in a sense, everyone to realize self-realization. They come back to do that work. They're willing to come back. I remember many, many years ago when I was with a friend, and that word just kind of surfaced. I'd never heard it before. Now they sell beer called bodhisattva. But at the time, it was an unknown word. And hearing the meaning of it, I remember saying to my friend, I said, if I get there, I'm not coming back. Because this world is a hard place. You know, I sense something more beautiful. It gets back to, is there something after death? I sense a realm that is so fluid and easy and beautiful. Not easy, beautiful, you know, unphysically hindering, you know, quicker,
Yes.
not so slow as Earth. I think that, you know, here we are. We suffer. I don't know what to do about it. I think we can all do our best, but I think ultimately we can trust that we are in the best seat in the house to learn what we need to learn and open ourselves to that learning.
Okay, thank you.
So maybe I should say something, and then we could probably end. This question seem to be slowing down unless people have more questions.
Sure, Jerry.
So I will say as a final thing, you know, after all this, I don't know what it is. In the end, we are saved by grace and not by anything we think we're doing. And I know we're all hell-bent on running the show and trying to be spiritual seekers, and that's all good stuff. But in the end, we don't succeed with those efforts. We succeed with our sincerity, with our longing, with our invocation, with our tears, ultimately with our surrender. And the place we fail is where grace comes through when we let the gods know we mean business. So all I can say is mean business. You know, you got nothing better to do. Your security is no security at all. Your money is not going to save you. Your beautiful family, your beautiful partner, nothing's going to save you. What's going to save you is deeply embodied prayer and invocation and grace in your surrender. You can't do it. You can't win this game. You're going to lose. And in your losing, in the humble tears of that surrender, you're going to find what you're looking for. And there is nothing more beautiful. But I don't know how to get there. I just know we can't. But it will be given if you mean business. Amen.
That's a great way to end, Jerry. Thank you for that. Yeah, we just wanted to say thank you very much again for spending your time with us this Sunday. And thanks to everyone who's joined. We can keep the Zoom open for, Jerry has to go, but we can keep the Zoom open for anyone who wants to stick around and chat. But other than that, thank you for joining us. And again, thank you to Jerry for giving of your time and energy so freely. And make sure to visit Jerry's website and check out his great books and videos and his art.
Thank you all. You have really good questions. It's so nice talking to people who care about this stuff. I mean, you know, I talk about it no matter what, and, you know, but it often feels so stifled and limiting, you know, because the world is hell-bent on something else. But I very much appreciate all of you and, you know, the sincerity and the beauty of the work you're doing here at the TAT Foundation. So thank you for having me. I feel honored that you even have me answering your beautiful questions. Thank you, and bye-bye.